creates questions the human mind cannot answer. Out of reach, past all we can see, hear, and touch, beyond all we understand, lies the extraordinary.
I told you, get down, get down!
The extraordinary is the apparent possession of this suburban Californian home.
Put something around my neck.
Ghostly images, photographed and videotaped. Images of the San Pedro ghost that have excited the scientific community.
I guess what's particularly unique about this case is that the phenomena had a distinct, belligerent, malevolent nature to it, in the sense that it almost seemed bent on hurting people.
It is the strange dream that prepared this woman for a family tragedy. A dream that she will always be grateful for.
I just believe that the dream was a warning to steal me from the shock that I was going to experience and the reality of what the dream actually meant.
The extraordinary is the day Jim Belushi's father insisted he have a picture taken on a white horse for the headstone of his future grave. A photo that almost cost Jim's father his life.
The irony of it just killed me, all the death signs, and he almost got killed.
It is the remarkable link that this simple suburban man appears to have with the dead, and the secrets he is able to pass on to the living.
Your mother have trouble to the chest area?
Yes.
Like a heart attack or such?
Yes.
The extraordinary is the untold story of a 4-year-old girl who predicted her own death after seeing mysterious pictures on the wall of her London home. Just some of the stories that lie beyond our normal understanding. Tonight, on The Extraordinary.
That film is remarkable. It was shot 21 years ago. Good evening. I'm Warwick Moss. It is a story with the kind of disturbing undercurrent that built up over the Amityville horror incident. It is a ghost story, but with this one, there are photographs and videotape that have excited not only Hollywood and the US publishing world, but scientific circles as well. So far, the people that hold the evidence have kept wraps on most of it. But our investigation of the real story behind the hype has turned up elements we didn't expect, including some video of the San Pedro ghost. It is either the story of an exceptional haunting or an elaborate hoax. It happened here, in this drab turn-of-the-century bungalow at the edge of the harbour in San Pedro, an hour south of Los Angeles. At the time, it was the temporary home of 32-year-old Jackie Hernandez, who was separated, pregnant, and struggling to support herself and her 2-year-old son, Jamie. Circumstances some point to as the likely source of an overactive imagination. Like Amityville, the story embodies eyewitness accounts of foul-smelling bloody liquid oozing from walls, collapsing beds, ghostly apparitions, strange lights, and something extra. The first recorded attempted murder of a human by a ghost. The alleged victim was this man, Jeff Wheatcraft, a still photographer who was a member of a team that investigated the haunting. Wheatcraft is a former school principal with a master's degree in administration.
Something did take me and put a plastic clothesline around my neck and pulled me to the side of the attic and hung me on a nail.
It is this kind of testimony, photographs and videotape that has fired the imagination of publishers and movie makers. Jackie Hernandez's version of the haunting, the one that prompted the investigation, begins in 1988. She says it became a 3-year nightmare that involved not one, but 2 ghosts, one friendly, one vengeful. Her story came to the attention of University of California psychophysiologist Dr. Barry Taff, a long-time investigator of the paranormal.
I guess what's particularly unique about this case is that the phenomena had a distinct belligerent, malevolent nature to it, in the sense that it almost seemed bent on hurting people.
Taft teamed up Wheatcraft with a professional cameraman, Barry Conrad, a self-described cynic when it comes to the supernatural.
I wanted to see proof. I wanted to see something that would convince me personally that the phenomenon was real. Now, I had read a lot of material about haunting phenomena.
In the beginning, Jackie's haunting experience began mildly enough, with her cat chasing unexplained shadows in the walls of the bungalow. Then she began to hear voices in the attic. One day, she saw pencils fly out of a pencil holder. Then came the day of the ooze. Jackie was washing dishes with her babysitter, and suddenly, the blood-like liquid began seeping from the kitchen walls.
When I pulled my hands out, the first thing, that's when it first appeared, was on my gloves underneath the water. I pulled them out and there was this orange stuff on them, and I didn't show Chrissy. I was thinking, I wonder what this is. My first thought was I cut my finger or something, but that wasn't the case. And I turned around to show her because it was all over, and then I noticed it was coming out of the glasses, it was coming off the walls, it was just oozing everywhere.
When details of her nightmare came to the attention of Conrad and his colleagues, they were ready to categorize it with the thousands of other duds and hoaxes reported each year.
We didn't expect anything to happen. You could go to hundreds of these cases and nothing would ever happen.
Then they spent 2 nights in the house, and the San Pedro haunting was about to become legend. The team was armed with sophisticated electronic sensing devices, video cameras, infrared detectors, and image intensifiers.
Early on in the case, some viscous fluid was flowing out of Jackie's cupboard, and we took some samples back and had it analyzed, and it was sort of a clear fluid with a orange fluorescence to it, and it turned out to be human blood plasma from a male, an older man. It had a heavy copper and iodine content to it. It was heavily oxidized. Now, what is that doing flowing out of anyone's cupboard in any house, let alone Jackie's?
Even during their interview of Hernandez on the first night, Conrad and Wheatcraft heard furious banging and scraping sounds in the attic. The noise prompted photographer Wheatcraft to climb above the ceiling. Almost at once, his 35mm camera flew from his hands.
I had the camera up behind, over my shoulder, and I'm firing 1, 2, and I remember firing into, I think it was the 3rd frame, and as I fired into that 3rd frame, I get this jerk of this camera being pulled out of my hands, completely pulled out of my hands. And you know, that's frightening because you know that there's nobody in that attic.
The experience this night prompted an investigation of the Jackie Hernandez case that would last 2 years, for the ghost in the attic was about to go haywire. The second incident in the attic involved Wheatcraft again, almost as though the ghost had somehow singled him out as his target. Wheatcraft and another investigator had climbed into the rafters together. At first, they could see and hear nothing unusual. Then suddenly, in the darkness, Wheatcraft felt something around his neck and cried out. In the confusion, the camera flashed.
And the next thing I remember is my neck is pulled over to the side near a rafter, 2x4 rafter, and I'm hung on a nail. I didn't know I was hung on a nail, of course, but I knew that there was something around my neck. And I knew that I had lost some time there because I don't remember anything being put over my neck or around my neck or anybody grabbing me or anybody picking me up or anything picking me up. But all of a sudden, there I was.
All right?
I told you, get down, get down!
This is the only photograph of the hanging the investigation team has so far released.
Put something around my neck.
Oh, shit.
Oh my God.
Jeff, get down right now.
Oh my God, I knew it when it was torn.
Please, get down, please.
What is this, Eric?
I wanted to get the hell out of there, and I think the statement was when I got downstairs was, it's definitely raising hell. And it was raising hell.
I don't know.
Whatever it was, Who was vicious? Oh, shit.
Gary, get down out of there, buddy.
Can you find my glasses?
Gary, Jeff,
Look at this. Look at
Jeff,
this.
turn the camera.
Jeff, are you okay?
Jeff,
I'm fine.
Jeff, tell me what happened, buddy.
Well, I don't know, Gary. I told Gary that there was nothing happening up there, and he turned around and came. He was coming this way. All of a sudden, I feel this thing around my neck, and it's got me hanging, and it's pulling on my leg.
Those that accept the Hernandez story believe that the ghost could be the spirit of a seaman named Herman Hendrickson, who drowned in San Pedro Harbor in 1930. Conrad believes that Hendrickson contacted them one night during a session with a Ouija board.
So we tried it on a lark that night, and I have to tell you, it was an incredible experience. It was the most frightening experience that I had. What happened that night was right out of a horror movie. The room got extremely frigid, extremely cold. The table shook violently. This entity communicated in very clear sentences, spelled out very intelligent words. And he told us that he was murdered. I said, "Where did you die?" And it said, Pedro Bay. I said, "What year?" It said 1930.
If Hendrickson is the vengeful ghost, who is the friendly orb of light that has so far acted benignly to both Hernandez and the investigation team? Jackie believes it is the spirit of the man who built the San Pedro bungalow, John Damon. Hernandez says both the friendly ghost and the vengeful one have left her alone the past 2 years since she settled in Los Angeles. She doesn't know where the bad one has gone, but believes the friendly one actually bid her a graceful farewell. Near the end of the haunting, Jackie says, the ball led her to the headstone of Herman Hendrickson in a San Pedro cemetery. It hovered above the grave for a moment, then suddenly disappeared. We've spoken about premonitions before. Those happenings we can't explain. Things that unsettle our nerves, make us question our own sanity. Just imagine having a premonition of disaster in your own family. Imagine carrying the burden of such an experience when you can't quite work out what it all means. This story is about Wendy Brown and her young daughter, Donna.
A dream. One of those fragments from the subconscious which are unnerving and which cannot be explained.
You done the prayers, Mom?
The dream, I believe, was trying to tell me that something was going to happen. And I just believe that the dream was a warning to steal me from the shock that I was going to experience and the reality of what the dream actually meant.
Wendy Brown had that dream back in October 1988 when she was living in Plymouth on the southwest coast of England. It came to her the night before she was due to set off on a week's holiday with her teenage daughters, Donna and Beverly.
And the dream was really strange because I was sitting in somebody's front room and the door opened straight into the front room, but I lived in a flat, so I'd never been in anybody's house where the door opened into the front room. And all of a sudden there was a loud banging on the door, and with that in burst a policeman. And he came straight over to me and said, "Are you Donna Brown's mum?"
You Donna Brown's mum?
And I said, "Oh my God, what's happened?" And he said, "It's all right." And he just walked out the door smiling.
Wendy's daughter Beverly still lives in Plymouth. She was 16 when her mother had that strange dream, and she remembers the scene at breakfast the next morning. Did it frighten you?
It did a little bit, yeah, because for my mum to have dreamed something like that, or for anyone to dream something like that, it'd frighten you.
Did it stay in your mind at that stage?
It did for a little while, but after that I just blanked it out.
Wendy's dream left the whole family bewildered, but they were determined to try to put it to the back of their minds. They were due to go off on holiday and didn't want anything to ruin those plans. They caught a train from Plymouth Station to Liverpool in the north of England, where they would be staying with friends.
We went on holiday, everything was fine, we had a good time. And the last night there, Donna had a friend in Liverpool who had been a pen friend, and Donna had said, "Can I go and stay at Claire Dodd's house for the night?" And I said, "Fine, so long as you're back on time to catch the train the next day."
Donna was 14, and she and Claire had been invited to a birthday party that night. Wendy was spending the last night in Liverpool at home with her friends. Young Beverly was already asleep upstairs, and around midnight the adults were about to turn in too.
And all of a sudden there was a loud banging on the door, and in burst a policeman. And at that time I thought, my God, I know what's going to happen because I've dreamt this.
And for a moment, it certainly followed the pattern of the dream exactly.
You Donna Brown's, Mum?
But that's where the similarity between dream and reality ended. You'll remember that in the dream, the policeman simply said, "It's all right," smiled, and walked away. So Wendy was hardly prepared for what actually happened next.
And I said, "I know what you're going to say." And he said, "No, I'm sorry, you don't." And he said Donna had been involved in a serious car accident and had horrific head injuries. You have to get to the hospital straight away.
Donna and her friend Claire never made it to the birthday party. Several hours earlier, while Claire's mother was driving them there, her car was involved in a freak accident. By the time Wendy and Beverly arrived at the hospital, it was too late.
One of the doctors came into the room we were in, and he closed the door behind him. He leaned against the door and slid down into a crouching position to explain to us what had actually happened. And all of us in the room just broke down. We couldn't believe it. And the fact that Mum had dreamt it as well, and we were only talking about it in the car on the way to the hospital, shook us up even more.
I was still in a state of shock, and I was slapping myself and twisting my hands together because it's just something that you don't believe is ever going to happen to you. You say to somebody, when it's my turn to go, I'll go, but you don't believe that any of your children are going to go before you.
A ghastly crash that claimed 3 lives just a matter of days after Wendy's mysterious dream. A dream that in some respects proved to be so accurate.
You Donna Brown's, Mum?
What was really incredible is that the policeman in the dream, who was well over 6 foot, was the exact same policeman that came through the door in reality. Both very tall and both had fair hair.
But as we've seen, there was a fatal flaw. Unfortunately, on the one crucial point, the vision and the actual event did not match at all.
Donna was my sister. She was also my best friend. I think if we had taken more notice of the dream, we would have been able to heed the warning and maybe have prevented it, and maybe she'd still be alive today.
Although Donna's death came as a big shock, dreaming that dream previously allowed me to accept the fact that she was dead much more easier than what it would have been if I hadn't had a dream to warn me of the situation that was about to occur.
Coming up, the strange photo session that almost claimed the life of actor Jim Belushi's father.
Well, he's got it in his head that he wants a picture of himself on his white horse dressed in his cowboy outfit with his guns and his scarf and his hat, with the horse reared up. And he wants this picture on his gravestone.
Secrets from the hereafter. George Anderson, a simple man who appears able to talk with the dead and relays secrets he would not have known.
You might also feel you didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her. But don't let that bother you. She says that she has not left you. She is not with you physically, true, but she is emphatically with you spiritually.
And the story of 4-year-old Tracy, who predicted her own death in a motorcycle accident after seeing strange pictures on the wall of this London house.
What do the pictures show?
A man in black on a bike, and she said this bike was going to hit her and she couldn't get out of its way.
Hollywood actor Jim Belushi is shy about personal interviews. He's been burned too often by questions about his famous late brother John, who died before his time in the fast lane of excess and drugs. But Jim is the antithesis of that legacy, a serious artist with a rare, gentle sense of the meaning of life. In recent years, Jim Belushi has established himself as one of Hollywood's A players, with starring roles in movies as diverse as Curly Sue, Traces of Red, K9, and the new miniseries Wild Palms. We spoke to him at his elegant home in Los Angeles. But as you'll be able to tell from the story he told us, neither Hollywood's bright lights nor its darkest moments have dimmed Belushi's simple appreciation of family life and values.
It was an ethnic household. My father came from Albania, and my grandmother lived with us, and there was another language being spoke. And so they cooked liver and onions and very bizarre kind of foreign foods, and then I would go out onto the street into this American lifestyle where people's parents spoke English, and they made regular meatloaf. And so I kind of lived in two different worlds in a way. My grandmother was probably one of the, lightest people I had. The white light, the giving, the commitment. She always put her ego aside and committed to the needs of others. And got nothing in return except for in serving. And I'm trying to move my life away along those lines now too. And it keeps the circle going. It keeps the circle of light going.
Belushi's sister is also very spiritual. In fact, she is a psychic.
My sister's great. My sister has the most positive energy, white light that comes from her. My sister's a famous psychic here in the United States, and she reads cards. Now, she doesn't read tarot cards because she believes there's an evil side to that. She just reads playing cards. She won't read our cards because she read my mom's cards and saw her death. And my mom died shortly after that of cancer. So she won't read our cards. But she'll do this question-answer one with me. I shuffle the cards, and I mix them all up with my right hand. I ask a question, take 5 cards and lay them out, and she can answer the questions for me. I definitely believe in God. When my son was born is when I really believed it. I mean, I always kind of believed that there was a God and stuff, but I kind of was in control of my own life at that time. But then when I saw the birth of my son, I went, oh, God, this is a miracle. And that kicked in the commitment. Yeah, I believe in God's will, that things happen for a reason, to learn a lesson, to grow, to be brought along.
Have you ever had any feeling that you were able to be in communication with anyone who's passed on?
No, not really. I believe that that communication is within, In our religion, they say that, there's all kinds of things that happen for 40 days. I don't know why they pick 40 days, but after someone dies, that their soul is around for 40 days and then it leaves, you know. And, you know, kind of went along with that. But I do believe that if you go along with that premise, you know, what I believe that is that soul, if there's a tragic death, that soul, someone told me one time that those souls hang around the earth for years because their souls are they're just taken off guard. And it could take 5 years for them to move on to the next place. And I thought about it, and what I really thought was it takes 5 years for the people here to let go of their soul. And I think it's more about people here on earth letting go of the soul, letting go of the spirit, so they can become a better person and closer to God and closer to themselves.
But it was a conversation about death with his aging father that Belushi said led him to an insight on the ironies of life.
So my father, he's older, you know, he's 76 or something. And he loves horses. He thinks he's John Wayne, you know. And so he's got it in his head that he wants a picture of himself on his white horse, dressed in his cowboy outfit with his guns and his scarf and his hat, with the horse reared up. And he wants this picture on his gravestone. And I said, no, Dad, don't worry about it. Take your time. Well, he was stubborn. And he had this whole thing in his head. And he laid out all his stuff the night before. And he dressed up and he went out and he sat on this horse. It's a white horse, which is a white horse is a symbol of death, right? He's taking a picture for his gravestone, which is another symbol of death. He's sitting on the horse, and a helicopter called Life Force, which is an ambulatory helicopter, flies over while he's taking the picture. The horse gets spooked, throws my dad off the horse, and my dad broke his shoulder, 3 vertebrae, 6 ribs. And the irony of it just killed me, all the death signs, and he almost got killed. And then the killer of it all was my stupid little cousin took the worst picture. I mean, it was like a huge picture of the horse. You couldn't see my dad's face. It was like a bad picture. But she got a close-up of him on the ground, passed out. And when I got the pictures back after the hospital, I said, Dad, you see this picture of you passed out on the ground? I said, this is the picture I'm going to put on your gravestone. Don't you dare. I said, Dad, you're going to be dead. This is for doing a stupid thing, wishing for death here. Oh, Jimmy, leave me alone. I said, no, leave death alone and just enjoy your life, will you?
Four weeks ago, in the first episode of the series of The Extraordinary for this season, we witnessed the remarkable ability of a man named George Anderson. Thousands believe this simple suburban man may be the link between the living and the dead. Scribbling randomly on a notepad, he conducts sessions with people mourning departed loved ones. Our story brought enormous response from viewers, and tonight we take another look at one of those sessions. Anderson is a meticulous man who lives in an average suburban house on Long Island in New York. The ordinariness of his daily life belies the fact that he is the subject of 3 books, and there is a 2-year waiting list of people desperate for an appointment. One of the women in his waiting room this day is Linda. In a series of tests conducted by The Extraordinary, Linda is the second. She has waited more than a year in the hope Anderson can contact or receive a message from her departed mother, Helen. She is neither a believer nor a cynic. She says she simply wants to see what happens. George Anderson has never met her and has been told nothing about her loss. The session we will see here is as it happened. Any editing is for time purposes only. Linda Schrenk lost her mother Helen to a heart attack in 1990. As inseparable as they were in life, Linda has felt bonded to something in the hereafter. She's become increasingly nervous and apprehensive after several hours in the waiting room. Before meeting George, she talked to us about her mother.
She was 66. She was energetic. She was loving. She was full of life. There's a big void in our family without her. She was the sweetest person. We were very close. You know, very close, like sisters. You know, we got along really good. I talked to her every day, most of the time. That's what was the hard part after she passed away. Go to pick up the phone and realize you can't call anymore. You know, there wasn't anybody to talk to. It was a void.
It had been particularly hard on Linda's father, who sank into a deep depression.
I had a twin sister, she's dead. She died 3 weeks after she was born. Yeah. But I don't know, with my mother dying, it just like brought it all back to my father. You know, he had flowers sent from the baby. I hope that I can relay to my father that my mom's all right, she's happy. I would love to hear who met her at the other side, that she's at peace, that I'm sorry that I didn't get to say goodbye.
This is what took place when Linda finally sat down with Anderson.
She says, Mom, your mom? Mm-hmm. Okay, your mother keeps saying, sister is with me, sister is here, and I'm like, yeah, okay, you know, I'm trying to think, is it her sister or whatever? And then when I said, why does she keep saying sister is with me? So it's obviously your sister. Yeah, because your sister claims that she's there to welcome your mother into the light, that she's there for her. So again, your mom just wants you to know that she's all right and at peace. You might also feel you didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her. But don't let that bother you. She says that she has not left you. She is not with you physically, true, but she is emphatically with you spiritually. Your mother very devout?
Very.
Because she certainly likes what's in my room.
Very devout.
Your mother have trouble to the chest area?
Yes.
Like a heart attack or such?
Yes.
Because it feels like there's weakness in the chest and the breathing. Your dad having trouble with his health?
He is.
Because she keeps calling out to him, not that she's calling to him to join her. She just calls out to him in concern that there's expressed concern with his health. She calls to Anna, and also the same thing, there's a concern with health.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, please tell you have heard from me, but she states a concern with health, tells her to watch where she's walking.
Mm-hmm.
More because her brain's ahead of her body than anything else. Also, Helen?
That's my mom.
Oh, thank heavens. She says she works with children in the hereafter, like following almost in the same line you do, not that they're necessarily handicapped, but helps them to cross over. But she said about being very good with children, so that's probably yourself.
She always told me that.
She just wants to let everybody know that she's all right and at peace. Please tell me you heard from Mom, you heard from Helen. You worry too much, she says. And when the water's calm, you're afraid, where's the shark? So she says, try to put yourself at peace. Like you worry because you didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her. Oh, you should have been there when she passed on. Oh, she had a lonely death. You're putting all these ideas in your head that just are not true. And your mother, again, says, once and for all, put yourself at peace. She knows that you love her, and that's what's important. Because not only you, mother and daughter, you're good pals.
That was right.
You know, unfortunately, you lose your mom, but you lose your best friend also.
Immediately after the session ended, we spoke to Linda. She believed that Anderson had indeed contacted her mother, and there were certain details she felt gave him great credibility. He mentioned that Linda's mother was with Linda's twin sister.
She said that she was with her mother and with my sister, who had passed away when she was a baby, and that all through her life, she had felt this stress of losing a baby. And I know that my mother felt that way.
Linda was also impressed with Anderson's accurate description of her Aunt Anna.
I have this one aunt that she's just clumsy. I mean, she just is always falling, you know. And in a joking way, she told my Aunt Ann to watch how she's walking, that her brain moves faster than her feet, and that she should start being a little bit more careful.
And finally, she was touched and comforted by the message from her mother.
All I can say is that I believe, felt like it was coming through her. Especially when she started talking about my job and the work that I do with kids, and that she's doing that now. Definitely, because that's one of the last things that she said to me when I talked to her right before she passed away, is how she admired me for my job that I was doing. So it was definitely coming from her.
Was there contact between the living and the dead this day? Linda believed there was. Whether it's true or not, she says she came away from the session a happier person than when she arrived.
I just feel more peaceful, that she's okay, you know, and that I did everything I could.
In 1972, Australian media personality Keith Smith was at the prime of his television and radio career. He'd travelled widely, met many people, and worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment. But Keith was always fascinated by the supernatural. And that was what took him to London to visit a most peculiar haunted house. In it lived a family called Adams, a family racked by tragedy. You see, the young daughter of the family had predicted she would die in a motorcycle accident. And she did. She had seen her own death in pictures on the wall. This film has never been shown before and is unedited from Keith Smith's original cut.
This is a rather remarkable house. You've heard, of course, that the English people are interested in ghosts and they believe in them. Well, some very interesting things have taken place in this house at 55 Imperial Avenue, Gillingham, which is about 30 miles from London. Inhabited by the Adams family, Mr. and Mrs. Adams and their children. And two of their children have been concerned with very, very eerie happenings. One of the experiences was associated with tragedy. And in this house today lives a small girl, about 4 years of age, and she actually sees things. We might persuade her to talk, we might not, but at least we can get the story from her mother, Mrs. Adams, who's waiting for us now. You were born in this house, were you, Mrs. Adams?
Yes.
How old is the house?
About 90 years old.
What happened here a couple of years ago?
My daughter Tracy, she saw pictures on her bedroom wall, and
What did the pictures show?
a man in black on a bike, and she said this bike was going to hit her and she couldn't get out of its way.
Sort of a nightmare, was it?
We said it was a nightmare, but she said no, it was pictures on the wall. She didn't dream it.
The man was dressed, how was he dressed?
In black.
Did he have anything with him or on anything? Or?
No.
But on a bike?
On a motor scooter.
I see. And what happened as a consequence, or?
A fortnight after this dream or nightmare, my daughter was killed by a bike. The man was dressed in black.
That's amazing. And as a consequence of that, what happened in this house?
My daughter Carol, then too, said that she could see and talk to her sister Tracy.
And this is Carol here?
Yes.
And she was 2 then, that's 2 years ago?
Yes.
And she talked to her sister since?
Quite frequently.
Have you had any experiences with your little girl, say, at night upstairs?
Yes. For 4 months, she talked every night and all night until dawn.
And when did this first happen? What happened first of all, you know?
My husband and I, it was late at night, were sitting downstairs and we heard a lullaby coming from Carol's room.
Where's that, upstairs, is it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. A lullaby. Did she know any lullabies?
No.
Was it sung by a man, woman, child?
A child.
Uh-huh. Any other voices?
Carol was laughing and talking.
And so you went upstairs, I suppose, did you?
No. My husband went and got the people from next door.
Mm-hmm. And you went upstairs?
My husband and the young boy from next door went upstairs.
And what did they find when they opened the door and went into the room upstairs?
Carol was face downwards in her cot inside a pillowcase.
Mm-hmm.
My husband removed the pillowcase and Carol seemed to be asleep. She rubbed her eyes.
What did you do with the pillowcase?
He threw it. He doesn't know where it went. He just removed it and threw it across the room.
And then?
They came downstairs. We went next door to have a cup of tea and quietened ourselves down. We came back and decided to put Carol back to bed again. Myself, my husband and the boy next door, we went up to Carol's room and the cot was completely remade. The pillow was back onto the pillow.
Back in its place, all made?
All made, as if she'd never been in a cot at all.
Must have scared you.
I was very frightened.
Yes, I imagine. Your little girl who lost her life, she made this ashtray at school, didn't she?
Yes.
You had an experience with this too, apparently.
Yes, upstairs.
And what happened?
My husband and I were asleep when there was a crash. We awoke and put the light on. And on the floor was the ashtray. The cigarette ends were in one neat little heap, the matches in another, and the ash in another.
Not spread over, as you'd imagine?
No. All neat and tidy.
Were you scared?
Very frightened. It was obvious that something was watching us, but we couldn't see it.
Do you think that she really talks with the sister these days?
Not so much now as she did before.
Does she show any signs, as a result of talking to her sister? Any messages relayed, or does she do anything or say anything which her late sister said when she was alive?
She has taken one or two of Tracy's habits.
Has she?
Yes.
And does she talk to you about Tracy?
Oh, yes.
What does she say? I mean, can she see her there in the room?
Oh, yes, she'll say, mind, you're going to sit on Tracy, and because we never see anything at all. We go to sit on a chair, and she'll say, no, she's already sitting in it, and ask us to get away from the chair.
And when she talks to her sister, do you think that her eyes are open? Is she awake, do you think? Or?
I think so. Now I do.
Your other children have seen things too, haven't they?
Yes.
And how old are you, Kevin?
7.5.
Well, what have you and your brother seen, and where was it?
A man who was near a bedroom door upstairs.
Oh, how did you come to see him? Who saw him first?
My brother.
What did he say to you?
He said, come and have a look at this, Kevin.
Oh, so you went and had a look at it? What was it like?
It was a man dressed in grey and he had a big book in his hand.
Was he solid or what?
We could see through him.
Could you?
Mm.
And how long did he stand there? For very long?
No.
And what did you and your brother do?
Ran back in bed.
I think I would have done the same thing. What's it like living in a house like this?
It was frightening to start with, but now we're getting used to it and it's part of the family.
And that, I think, is the understatement of the year.
John Newcomb will never forget the night before the opening ceremony of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. That was the night a strange image of his best mate came to visit. As it turned out, it was to say goodbye.
4 days later, I was out at dinner with a friend, and I started telling him about this story. And I got halfway through the story in the middle of the restaurant, and I just started crying. It was about 15 minutes before I could stop. It was like a grieving came out from me.
John Newcomb, with an untold story, next week.
Nuke and Pancho, and strange telepathic signals. It's a very moving story. Also next week, a remarkable story from the annals of Australian aviation. It's about a young air hostess with the old airline ANA, and the night she didn't want to fly, she had foreseen a plane crash. Good night for now. See you in the future.
I'm worried about flying tonight.
Why?
I had a dream, the one I told you about.
Oh, don't worry about that.
I don't like this, Liz. I don't feel right.